Small Town Big Story is the latest slow burn comedic drama on Sky, and across its 6 episodes, the show never quite finds its feet, despite some nice ideas. However, those ideas have clearly been ripped right from Apple TV Plus's series The Big Door Prize, and unfortunately everything here just falls flat by the time the final credits roll. The premise is as cliche as it comes. A small village resident called Wendy heads to the big city, then has to return to said sleepy village years later, where she finds everything is the same as it was, including her old flame, Seamus. Now, it turns out the village is actually prone to supernatural phenomena, what with the birds dropping from the sky, weird radio interference, and a secret that she and Seamus have been keeping for a while. Instead of dragging out the mystery or giving us some teasing glimpses across the show, Small Town Big Story lets us know almost immediately what's going on. In fact, it's also worth noting here that the promotional posters and material that Sky have released also spoil the twist too. Great work, marketing team. Yes, it turns out our two titular characters were abducted back in the day, and as they wrestle with what this means, they deal with their personal and professional life issues. The story mostly revolves around a big Hollywood production rolling into town, fronted by Wendy. This causes friction for the small village, as they're not really accustomed to a mass of tourists rolling in, which is where most of the drama and friction stems from. The show tries to add in some comedy to all of this, mostly with slapstick or awkward gags that miss as much as they hit, in terms of comedic quality. However, the tone, feel and general pacing is alarmingly similar to the Big Door Prize, which I mentioned earlier. Everything here feels like a pale imitation of that series, although the characters in Apple's series are far better than what's here, and the mystery is nowhere near as endearing or fleshed out. And given the guys over at Apple are notorious for dragging out shows way past their initial concept, that's certainly saying something. The biggest problem with Small Town Big Story though stems from the characters. All of them lack depth, and the arcs they do go on are pretty much non-existent. There's an ongoing infidelity angle, for example, as Seamus's wife Catherine is sleeping with her daughter's teacher, and the resolution feels completely half-baked, despite a nice confrontation in the penultimate episode. Furthermore, there's an unexplained same-sex angle for Seamus's son, Sonny, which is just completely dropped in favour of a left-field love confession for another character. Meanwhile, Joanne, Seamus's daughter, has very little to do here, while the other cast feel like they're all playing second fiddle to Seamus and Wendy's story. Sure, a couple of the quirky residents get their time in the spotlight, like Big Jim, who happens to be the lead star in the production, but it's never handled in a way that makes you really care about these people. The biggest problem here though stems from the chemistry between Christina Hendricks, who plays Wendy, and Paddy Considine, who plays Seamus. They have maybe 1 or 2 scenes that work relatively well, but overall have very little chemistry together on screen. Their flashbacks, which are sprinkled across the season, add absolutely nothing that we don't already hear through expository dialogue between the two in the present. In fact, there are some egregious examples here where we see parts of the abduction only to then have it reiterated to us again through dialogue not long after. And at its worst, we actually hear about some of this before these scenes take place, making them just completely redundant. Furthermore, the show seems to be going the route of seeing Wendy and Seamus reminisce or at least try to rekindle the romance they had before, but they don't. In fact, their angle just ends. What's more damning though is that nobody really changes or grows by the time the show reaches its conclusion. Seamus is still a doctor and a husband, Catherine actually gets a positive reputation boost for some reason, while the townsfolk are exactly the same as they were before, just with a bit of extra knowledge. In fact, the one exception here is perhaps Shelley and her father, who do have a really nice bonding moment, but that's about it. Unfortunately, Small Town Big Story just falls flat across the board. Even the most boring premise can be ignited with charm from its lead cast, but there's none of that here. The comedy is all over the place, eventually devolving into toilet humour in episode 6, despite the rest of the show never sinking down that route. This, more than anything else perhaps, highlights just how disjointed this whole affair is. No pun intended on the word affair there. Instead, most of the show tries to adopt this quirky off-kilter humour, which I've mentioned before, which is very much going to be an acquired taste for many. To be fair, there are definitely a few chuckles here and there, especially the self-deprecating and awkward segments, but beyond that there's just not a whole lot to get excited about. There's definitely potential with this one, but Small Town Big Story needed a thorough rewrite before going into production, alongside zippier episodes with a better cast and much better definition for its characters. Instead, what we get here is a dull sludge of disappointment that never materialises into anything but a forgettable, disposable series. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.